Hey, just a quick video here to show you how to get up and running with Blocknative's SDK. You may want to use the SDK if you don't need the UI capabilities of Notify.js, or if you're just running some server-side code and want to get some transaction notifications. So the SDK is just a light wrapper around a WebSocket connection to the Blocknative backend, and just provides like a convenient API and data handling for that connection. So I've got just a regular button here connected to a Web3 send transaction call. You can confirm the transaction, and then nothing happens over here. So what we can do, we can install the SDK, yarn add BNC SDK, and then we can start uncommenting some of this code. So you need to import the SDK from BNC SDK, and there's a couple of constants here that we need to get set up for the initialization. So the first is a DAP ID. This is just an API key, and you can create one at account.blocknative.com. Next up is a network ID, and this is the network that you'll be running transactions on. I'm just setting it to Rinkeby for this demo. So then you're ready to initialize the library. So to initialize it, we call the Blocknative SDK as a function, and we pass in an initialization object, and we have those two constants there under DAP ID and network ID. And this will return you the initialized library. Then next we need to grab the client index off the initialized library. So every time you initialize it, it gives you a unique client index. So this allows you to initialize it multiple times if you want, giving you separate channels of notifications. Notify.js and Onboard.js use this mechanism so that if they're both running in the same client, they have separate channels of the different transaction notifications. So if you do want to set up separate channels, you can. Probably unlikely that you'll need to, but it is necessary for when you're making the transaction calls. So the rest of the code was already here. We get the provider from the window object. We initialize Web3 with that provider. We have a button here that calls this send function when it's clicked. Here's our send function. So it gets the accounts from the wallet, gets the address from the first position on the accounts, creates a TX options object, which has the to address, the from address, and the value of the transaction. And then it was just sending this transaction. So I'm going to uncomment this code here. So to start tracking a transaction, we need the transaction hash. So Web3 on the send transaction call has a PROMI event which we can listen to events for. So on transaction hash, we'll listen to that event. It'll give us the hash. And then what we can do, we can call Blocknative initialize instance, blocknative.transaction, pass in the client index to indicate the channel that we're sending to and listening to, and pass in the hash of the transaction we would like to track. And that'll give us back an object here that has an emitter parameter, and you can use that to listen for transaction status updates on that emitter. So we call emitter.onTXPool. The TXPool event code indicates when the transaction has been detected in the mempool by our backend. So I'll just log the transaction object, which has all the details of the transaction there, and just a little log saying it's in the mempool. And then I'm also setting a listener for a TX confirmed event for when the transaction is mined and in a block. Again, just log the transaction object and a log that it has been confirmed. So we can have a look at that over here. Send the transaction. Confirm. And there's the transaction object. The transaction's in the mempool. So you can open this up and you have a whole heap of information here. For more details on this information, check out docs.blocknative.com, and you can also check out the event codes that you can listen for on the emitter there. And you can see, transaction in the mempool was our first log there, and then the transaction object again, and the transaction has been confirmed. So that's all you need to do to get up and running with the Blocknative SDK.